Do you want to learn all the tips and tricks you need to paint furniture, whether you're a beginner or maybe you haven't been able to perfect the most perfect finish? I want to show you today how to use chalk mineral paint and how to get the most perfect finish. There are going to be some tips and tricks, so it's not just about putting some paint on it and going. If you want to see that, make sure you stay tuned. Good day, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, my name is Crys'Dawna, so hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed. If you are not new here, welcome back, friends and family. So the channel has been growing a little bit, and I realized that there's different people coming and going, and so I wanted to give something for everybody. So the last video I did had some woodworking in it and some blending, and I realized that not every single person that wants to paint furniture either wants to blend or do that, or maybe you're new and you've never painted a piece of furniture and you found my channel and you don't know where to start. So this is going to be the ultimate basics. Now I do have another basics video. I'm gonna pop it up right here, but that video I applied a transfer. We're not gonna do that here. We are literally going to only just flip this piece. Now this is a custom, and so we're not gonna have pricing and all that stuff on there, but this is to show you how to paint your very first piece of furniture. I'm gonna show you how to change the hardware and how to plug the hole so that you can change the hardware completely. I'm gonna show you how to prep the piece. I'm going to show you how to do a one color finish and have a really nice smooth finish with it. And I'm gonna show you how to seal it with a polyacrylic. So we are going to, this is very basic. If you're advanced, you could maybe still watch it and learn something. So this is for those of you who maybe have never painted a piece of furniture. Maybe you have and you're still not confident. Maybe you're just waiting. Maybe you didn't even know you wanted to paint a piece of furniture until you saw this video. So stay here because this is going to be a very basic, down to the bare bones of how to paint a piece of furniture, one color, change the hardware, and nothing fancy. But the piece will turn out totally different. It's amazing what paint will do. So stay here if you guys want to see that. This is the dresser we'll be working on. This is a custom, but we are going to be changing out the hardware and we're going to paint this completely different than what it is. This is special to my client. It was the first piece they got when they were married 10 years ago, and so we are going to transform it for them. Her husband actually has no idea. It is a surprise for him. The first thing I always do is remove the hardware on any piece that I am going to paint. So I use just a little bucket, or that is a mixing bowl, and you can put them in there in case you're going to reuse them. You don't want to lose them. And then I'm going to put a piece of tape on the inside of the drawer where that pre-existing screw hole was. And we're going to use a 2-part wood filler. The reason why I put the tape on there is when you push that wood filler in there, it makes it stop. And so it's just, so it doesn't keep continually going through that hole that goes on the other side of the drawer. So you're going to use a 2-part wood filler. Bondo, same exact thing. I think Minwax has a 2-part wood filler. This is really great because it sets up really fast. So you're going to take the stuff that's in the can, and that is what's going to be the volume. And then there is this little thing that I am unscrewing, and that is the hardener. You do not need a lot of this, and you're just going to put a little tiny bit into the other stuff that you took out of the can, and you're going to mix them together. And you don't have a super long time to work with this until it starts hardening. So you have about 10 minutes before it really starts setting up. So don't over mix. So if you mix too much, it's going to harden and you're going to waste it. So, you know, use a little bit at a time. If you have to go back and remix another batch, that's better than you wasting it. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a plastic spatula and you're going to push that into the hole. Remember, it should be tape on the other side. You're going to push it in there, and then I'm going to take it and I'm going to spread it over the top of the hole, almost like you're frosting a cake, because you want to make sure that you hit any areas, because sometimes if you see around that hole, the pre-existing hardware also dug into there. So you're filling not only the hole, but you're filling that pre-existing hardware mark as well. I wait about an hour for it to dry, and then I'm going to take a 120 grit sandpaper and you're going to sand it. I'm using a 3x4 electric ray. It is an investment initially, but I super like it. If you're a beginner, you can just go and get a random orbital for under $50. But you're going to sand those down, and then you're going to go in and you're going to clean your entire piece. I use Dixie Belle's White Lightning to clean my piece. This is a degreaser, a deglosser, and so I clean the entire piece inside and out with this. And once you are done cleaning the piece inside and out, you want to take clean water and a clean rag and go over it again, because you don't want any residual cleaner on here. It will cause adhesion issues. Now, this piece is slightly shiny, and so I'm just going to show you. I actually do this prep with most of my pieces. It's not going to hurt it to over prep, so just think that way. Because this piece is shiny, I just want to show you guys how to prep a piece for a long-lasting finish. So I am taking a fine sandpaper, roughly a 220, and I am going to scuff sand the entire piece. So some people ask me what's the difference between scuff sand and just sanding down to the finish. Just scuff it. You're just trying to take the shine off. You don't need to go down to the bare wood when you're scuff sanding. And then I take a microfiber cloth and I wipe off all of the dust. You can probably even take a damp rag and do it. Wait for it to dry if you do that. And then I'm just going to go in and I'm going to paint. Now, I do thin layers when I paint. It is much better to do thin layers and have it nice and neat than go in and glop it and do thick layers. Also, when you do thin layers, you are able to control the brush strokes a lot better. Now remember, these are hand-painted pieces, so they're not going to be 100% brush stroke free. Someone's going to tell you, or say in the comments probably, to get a sprayer and that'll be the easiest thing. And it is easy, but I don't have a setup for a sprayer and not everybody does. I prefer to use my hands. You can still get a flawless finish with a paintbrush as long as you're using a high quality paintbrush. So I hand paint all my stuff. And so what I'm doing is I am hand painting the entire frame first. So we're working on the frame first before we work on the drawers. I pulled all the drawers out so that I could work on this frame before we go in with the drawers and do anything with those. I want you to remember one thing: attention to detail. So when you have attention to detail, you will have a flawless finish. And what do I mean by that? I'm about to show you a few things that you need to go correct. So when you have paint that is sitting, that's a little bit more, you need to go back and you need to brush it. So after you're done painting your piece, go inspect it and make sure that there isn't extra paint sitting in those little areas. Right here, there's a little glob of paint. Go in and lightly brush it out. Right here, you can see there's a little bit of a drip. Go in, take your brush, and lightly brush it out. And that will help prevent you from having drips and having paint pooled in areas that shouldn't be, and it's going to give you a more professional look. So attention to detail and going through and having pride in your work and looking over your own work to make sure that you get that kind of thing, you get all those kind of little things, will set your work apart. When I'm painting the top of a piece, I lightly spray it with my mister bottle, and then I'm going to go in, and at the edge, I'm going to go in the opposite direction of the wood grain. And the reason why I do this is so that I can get those edges and I don't run the risk of having paint pulled up on those edges, because that's another thing you see is a lot of people don't go through on the edges and then there's paint that pulls up right there. So I'm going to dip my brush into the jar and I'm going to wipe off the excess paint, and you can see right here where there's a little bit of water on that. And what that does is it allows the paint to spread a little bit more. Again, these are just very thin layers, and it's better to go in and do an extra layer than to have your paint globbed on there and then it just doesn't look nice. So what I'm doing is I'm dipping my brush in, I'm doing long strokes now, and I'm going with the grain now that I have gotten that piece on the edge. And I'm going to do long strokes, and I'm going to go just all along the top of the piece with these long brush strokes. And then once I am done, I am going to go in the opposite direction. The reason why I do this is, one, because this is a thin layer, it allows any excess paint that's on here to spread to any area that doesn't have paint. So this allows you to use less paint when you do this. Also, this is going to help give you a more even finish, and it helps clean the brush strokes. So right here, I'm going in the opposite direction, and I do work in sections when I do the top. So make sure you just continuously do this. Don't let this part dry and then go to the next part. Now I'm going in the original direction of my paint, and I'm just lightly going through. Now right here you can see, okay, it does get a little bit blurry, but I'm erasing this brush stroke. See, it goes blurry, but it goes back into focus. So it's blurry, then it goes back into focus, but you can see how it was erasing the brush strokes. I don't know what was happening with my lens. It wasn't wanting to focus, but you can see right here, I'm going to the next section and I'm overlapping that other section just a little bit. It's still wet. And so that way I can go in, do my long brush strokes, go in the opposite direction, and then I'm going to lightly feather those original brush strokes into the next part. Now I'm going to go after everything is dry and I am going to lightly sand with a 220 grit or higher to not only smooth everything out, but again, we're military families, and so I'm going to lightly distress this piece. Everyone asks me, why do you always distress your pieces? Well, I do it for military families because if you know anything about moving overseas or anywhere really, you just never know. And so a light distress will help disguise any kind of nicks that may happen in a huge move. So I am just lightly sanding this entire piece down so that we can smooth everything and just get any kind of little debris off before we top coat. I'm going to take a microfiber cloth after I do this and I'm going to wipe the entire thing down to get any of the dust off. When you sand your paint, it's going to lighten up a little bit. You can see over to the right, it looks darker. To the left, it looks lighter. Not a big deal. Once you put your top coat on there, it's going to darken back up. So don't worry about that. I'm going to use the flat clear coat by Dixie Belle. I'd say for a beginner, the flat or the satin are the easiest ones to use. And so I'm using a blue sponge and I'm pouring some of that top coat into a paper plate and I'm just going to put a little bit on the sponge and I'm just going to try to evenly wipe it on the entire piece. Again, I'm going to show you a few things. Remember, attention to detail is the theme here. And so I'm going to show you a few ways to correct if your clear coat, your top coat gets in areas that it shouldn't. But right now you want to just put thin layers of this clear coat on. If it misses a spot, don't worry about it. You're going to go in with your second coat. Now with these clear coats, you don't have to sand in between coats, so don't worry about it. So I am going to just go in and try to evenly put it on here. Again, if you miss a spot, don't worry about it because I'll do 2 coats of this and it'll cover it on the second go round when I go through it again after the first coat dries. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to fix a few things. Now you see this clear coat right here? Now clear coat is white until it dries, but in these little corners and cracks, you don't want it to pull up right there. So right here, I'm going to take a cheap chip brush and I'm going to kind of just brush in that little crack right there to get all the excess out. And then I'm going to take my sponge and I'm going to smooth it out. You want to do this before it dries, obviously, or you won't be able to do this. So make sure you go through and look before your clear coat dries. Again, once you put your clear coat on, it is going to have a little bit of a white hue, but it will dry clear. But in those areas, if you don't take it out, especially for colors that are lighter, it will yellow if you let it pool in areas. And that is just the way clear coat is. When you let it pool, it will do funky things. So this right here, there's a little bit too much. So I'm taking the brush and I'm just kind of spreading it around, and then I'm going to take my sponge and I'm going to smooth everything out. Again, this is what I'm talking about when I say attention to detail. So when I paint things, it's not perfect right after. I go through and I fix anything first before I finish. Now that we're done with the frame of the dresser, I'm going to go in with my drawers. So I'm going to do my light scuff sand on the drawers. We'd already cleaned them, remember, so we cleaned the drawers previously when we cleaned the body. So now we're going to scuff sand. We're going to wipe all the excess off with a microfiber cloth, and then we will be ready to paint the drawers. And I'm going to show you how I do this. This seems like when I say I'm teaching you how to paint, it seems like, oh, that can't be hard. But over the years, I've learned different techniques to get really great finishes, and I just want to share that with you. So I am going to lightly go in on the sides of the drawers. You don't want to glop the paint on the drawers because it will affect your drawers opening and closing. So if you just do light little Can you see how I'm just kind of feathering it on the sides so that you get the color on there? And then you go on the edges of the drawers like I just did. So you get all the edges so there's no excess paint that's going to sit on those edges. And then I spray a little bit of water on the drawer front, and then I do long strokes with thin layers of paint, and then I go in the opposite direction. You can see the areas that don't have paint, and when I do that opposite direction, it covers those. So that's a good example of why I do that and how it takes even the little bit of paint that you already have and it covers some of those areas that didn't have paint on it. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to sand my drawers with a high grit sandpaper to smooth everything out and get it ready for top coat. I'm going to use the same flat clear coat, and I'm going to use the same sponge, and I'm going to put just a little bit of clear coat on the sponge, not too much because I don't want it to run, and I'm going to go along the edges, and then I'm going to go over the front, and I'm just going to start at one edge and then work my way to the other one. Again, attention to detail, so go back after you've done this and look at the sides to make sure there's no excess clear coat that has kind of glopped up, and just wipe it away so that way you don't have anything that could make your drawer stick. And then you allow it to dry and it is top coated. Now, these sponges, as long as you're using a water-based clear coat, you can clean those sponges and reuse them as many times as you need until they fall apart. We will be doing new hardware, and so I'm going to find the center of the drawer. So this is the center at the length, and now I'm going to find the center of the drawer at the width, and we're going to find the intersecting, and then we're going to make a little cross or an X so that we know where the dead center of this drawer is. You could just probably erase that little mark below it if you want so it doesn't confuse you. But I'm going to take my hardware and I'm going to find the center of this pool. Now, if I was just doing knobs, I could have taken my drill, drilled a hole, put the knob in where that little mark was, boom, I'm done. But not, because I am doing these handles. So I'm going to find the center of the handle and I'm going to line it up with that center mark that I just had. And I'm going to just mark with my pencil. You want to do this in pencil, by the way. I'm going to mark with my pencil how far apart those little handles are where the screws need to go. And now I'm going to take my speed square and I'm going to find on the speed square where that center is, and it just so happens to be where that diamond is. So I'm going to mark right there. Then I'm going to go over and I'm going to mark on the right side as well, and this is the center of the drawer, but now I know how far apart those screws need to be. And so I'm going to drill my hole where I marked on that speed square, and then I'm going to put my screws in. We're going to screw it, and it's going to have brand new hardware, and it's going to look awesome. I really hope that didn't confuse you. They do have like not new, but they have hardware kits that you can like use little things to find the measurements of your hardware and all that stuff, but I'm too cheap and I haven't bought one yet. So I just measure everything out. Also, if you just take your microfiber cloth and you dampen it a little bit, you can wipe off that pencil. Don't mark really hard with your pencil because you don't want to make gouges in your drawer front. Just lightly mark it and then you'll be able to wipe it off later. Also, when I am tightening my hardware, I toggle back and forth between the screws. So I'll go to the right side and I'll tighten a little bit, left side tighten a little bit, right side tighten a little bit, left side tighten a little bit. That allows your new hardware to go in better, and then you don't strip your screws. Okay, everybody, so this piece is done. This video is done. Every so often I like to go back to the basics for those of you who maybe are struggling with getting a really good finish, or those of you who are new here and haven't painted a piece of furniture and maybe you just need to dive in and do it. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will have another video hopefully later on this week. It's been a little bit of a crazy week. My son's in soccer, my daughter's in gymnastics a couple times a week, so I'm going to keep trying to get you guys out the content, but I want to make sure that it is good content, so quality over quantity. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure if you are not subscribed, you hit the subscribe button, and remember, everything I use is in the description below. I will have a breakdown for you of what the size of this dresser is. It also has a mirror that came with it that I didn't stage with, so I'll give you the size of the mirror, the size of the dresser, and the products I use, and a breakdown of price. So if you guys are just starting, you know how much you're going to be investing in just supplies. This isn't really for you to know how to flip and price things and stuff. This is also for those of you who are just doing it for yourself. I get a lot of questions about how much will this cover, or how much paint will this cover, or how much paint do I need to cover this? So this is specifically for the brand that I used. Each paint is going to be different, but it gives you kind of a rough estimate of what I use, the breakdown, the size, all the things. I'll give you price, and that way you have it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Happy creating, and I will see you next video. Bye. I just want to give you a rundown of the products I use and what you may need for a dresser this size. I did not have a 16-ounce jar of paint, but I used a full 8-ounce and just a little bit of the other 8-ounce, so a 16 would do you good. This clear coat is a 16-ounce, and I really didn't use very much at all, so an 8-ounce would probably be the best for you if you're just starting out. The blue sponge is super helpful, and so I really highly suggest it. I did use my Dixie Belle mini synthetic brush. It is a little bit more expensive, so you can get ones that are cheaper. Just make sure you're getting a high quality brush. I changed the hardware out, so I paid for that, but you can always use your pre-existing hardware. So if you're doing your own furniture, or you're doing a first piece, you can do it for under $100, which may seem like a lot, but if you're gonna go buy a brand new dresser, it is going to cost you way more.
Hey, darling, can I tell you what's been on my mind? Sick and tired of the 9 to 5 in the city life. Hey, darling, we could get out of town, see the beautiful world around, wanna see it now. Pack our bags and get in that car, leave a little note and we'll drive real far. Let's get out, we can leave this city, let's drive to the open air. Yeah, the countryside is so pretty.